So here's another example of a program that you would write with a while loop, and this will lead us into the topic of for loops. So here's the example. You're a programmer working for NASA. Your job is to create a countdown display. The program should take an integer n as input and print out line by line each non-negative integer starting from n in descending order. For example, if the input is 5, then the output should be 5, change lines, 4, change lines, 3, change lines, 2, change lines, 1, change lines, 0. So let's think about how we would structure this program, and you would realize that it's actually very similar to how we would create the online banking login system. We would take an input first and store it as n. The first step is to print n, because we know that n is a non-negative integer, and so our count will start there. And then we subtract 1 from n. So if we started with n equals 5, now n is 4. Here's the crucial step. We check if n is negative yet, because we want to stop when we counted 0. Now in this case n is 4, so it's not negative. So we go on, we print n, so this time we have printed 4, and we subtract 1 from n, so now n is 3, and we check again if n is negative. If it is, then we stop the program. If it's not, we print n again and subtract 1 from it once more. And we keep repeating the same process, and so same thought. We collapse all the infinite layers and replace it with an arrow that points backwards. So as long as n is not negative, we go back, print n again, and subtract 1 from n. And you can write this out in code using a while loop. Now, if you look at this piece of code long enough, you'll realize that really what is changing inside the while loop is a number n, or more precisely an integer n. And whenever you have this kind of changing number, especially when you have a number that's incrementing or decreasing by a constant amount inside the while loop, there's actually a more compact way of writing this code, and this is called for loop. So we just replace the whole block of code with the following. We say for I in range n from n to negative 1 with an increment of negative 1, we print I. So I really want to break down what's inside the brackets, or whatever comes after the for. So for is what tells the computer you're about to construct a for loop. I is an integer, and it's going to take on the value that appears first in the bracket over here. So n is the value at which I starts. Negative 1 is the value at which I stops. And in the convention of both Python and Java, the first two numbers in this bracket are inclusive, exclusive. So I starts at n, but it will end at 0 right before it reaches negative 1. And that third number in the bracket is the increment value. So in this case, every time we run through the loop, the value of I is going to decrease by 1. And finally, inside the loop, the action we take is we print I. So again, going back to the flowchart, you can trace out the code. We take n as input, and each time we run through the loop, the value that we're printing out decreases by 1. So that's the idea of a for loop.